Why has a wooden church in Norway stood undisturbed in rain, snow, and stormy winds for 800 years, while your cherished deck begins to rot after 3 seasons? At first glance, this sounds absurd. We have impregnations, varnishes, antiseptics, innovative coatings, and controlled drying. Logic suggests that progress should make things more durable. But in the case of wood, we see a paradox. The more modern the approach, the faster it dies. Medieval craftsmen did not know chemistry, did not read Gauss standards, and did not use moisture meters. But they lived in a world where the wrong choice of wood, knot, or roof shape could mean not just repairs, but disaster. They knew how to listen to the forest, understood which tree to cut, when to fell it, how to turn it, and how it would behave in decades to come. Their churches and houses survived wars, epidemics, and changing climate cycles, simply because they were built in complete harmony with the nature of the material, rather than in pursuit of deadlines. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how carpenters, illiterate in our understanding, created structures that have stood for centuries, why grain orientation is more important than any impregnation, and how a few forgotten principles of the old school can literally save your home from slow but inevitable destruction. What if I told you that everything you believed about harvesting timber is not true? The modern industry cuts down trees all year round, guided only by delivery schedules and the availability of equipment. In the Middle Ages, this approach would have been considered harmful and a waste of a valuable resource. The craftsmen of the past knew that a tree is a living organism that lives according to its own cyclical laws. It could only be cut down during a strictly defined period when nature was dormant. Winter logging was not a whim, but a harsh necessity for obtaining high-quality material. When the cold weather set in, the movement of sap inside the trunk practically stopped. The tree went into hibernation, getting rid of excess moisture and nutrients. This made the wood dense, dry, and as stable as possible. Trees cut down in winter did not crack during drying and retain their shape. The main enemies of wood have always been microorganisms and fungi, not water or wind. They need a nutrient medium consisting of sugars and starch to reproduce. In a summer forest full of life, the tree trunk is overflowing with these substances that are delicious to pests. In winter, however, sugar reserves are minimal, and there is simply nothing for fungi to eat in such material. It was a natural antiseptic provided by nature itself. The lumberjacks went into the thicket in the most severe frosts, when the snow crunched under their feet. It was hard, exhausting work that required tremendous endurance and strength. They felled huge trunks by hand, using only axes and saws. Each blow had to be precise so as not to damage neighboring trees. The cold helped them, as frozen wood was easier and smoother to cut. Choosing the right time was determined not only by the season, but also by the phases of the moon. Old masters believed that the waning moon drew the last juices from the tree. Modern science is skeptical about this, but practice has shown excellent results. Logs harvested during the new moon did indeed last longer and rot less. It was a combination of mysticism and centuries of observation. After felling, the wood was not rushed out of the forest, but left to lie until spring. The branches and crown were often left on the trunk for several more weeks. The needles continued to evaporate moisture, acting as a powerful pump, drawing the remaining water out of the trunk. This process was called natural drying on the stump. This was the only way to achieve ideal moisture content without drying chambers. Modern sawmills chase volume, processing wet, sugar-rich spring and summer wood. Such material begins to turn blue and moldy while still in storage. To hide defects, it is generously sprayed with chemical bleaches. The buyer receives a beautiful-looking board that is already infected with spores inside. The lifespan of such a product is predetermined from the moment it is cut. A medieval carpenter, seeing a modern board from a hardware store, would be horrified. A loose structure, wide annual rings, and high moisture content are signs of a defect. For him, such material would only be suitable for kindling a stove. We have lost the culture of selection, replacing it with standards and grades. quality has given way to quantity and affordability. It was at the harvesting stage that the foundation for the longevity of the future building was laid. No impregnation, even the most expensive, can correct mistakes made in the forest. If the foundation is rotten, the house will not last long. This rule worked 1,000 years ago and still works today. Do you think it is worth returning to the practice of winter logging today? Or do modern drying technologies fully compensate for the quality of the raw materials?
It's true.
Share your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new investigations.
The process.
Are you ready to learn the truth about how water turned wood into stone? Logic tells us that wood must be protected from water so that it does not rot. However, in the Middle Ages, logs were deliberately sent on long voyages down rivers. This process was called rafting, and it served more than just a transport function. The river became a huge natural laboratory for improving the properties of wood. Freshly cut trunks were tied into huge rafts and sent downstream. The journey could take weeks or even months before the wood reached the city. All this time, the logs were in constant contact with flowing cold water. The water penetrated deep into the pores of the wood, but did not destroy it. On the contrary, it washed out everything that could lead to decay. As we have already mentioned, the main food source for fungi and beetles is tree sap, sugars, and gum. River water acted as a powerful solvent, gradually washing these substances out of the fiber structure. By the end of the journey, the log had become virtually sterile in terms of nutrition for parasites. It was a kind of chemical cleaning without the use of chemicals. The wood became unpalatable to biological enemies. After being removed from the water, the logs underwent a long and thorough drying process. The water evaporated from the freed pores, and the wood fibers contracted, becoming as hard as bone. Wood treated in this way acquired remarkable strength and resistance to warping. It ceased to react to changes in air humidity. A log house made of such wood practically did not shrink. This method was used everywhere, from cold Scandinavia to hot Venice. Venetian palazzos still stand on piles of larchwood that has been water hardened. In water without access to oxygen, larch not only does not rot, it turns to stone. This property was actively used in the construction of bridges and dams. Water became a preservative rather than a destroyer. Modern logistics uses timber trucks and railways, eliminating the rafting stage. It is faster and cheaper, but deprives the wood of an important stage of preparation. We get wood saturated with organic matter, which begins to ferment inside the trunk. In an attempt to protect it, we coat the surface with poisons. But the problem remains inside, hidden under a layer of varnish. Log timber was valued much higher than that brought by carts overland. Craftsmen could identify such material by the sound of an axe blow. Interestingly, the water in the rivers was cleaner back then and did not contain any chemical pollutants. This allowed the washing process to occur naturally. Today, it is virtually impossible to repeat this process on an industrial scale. Environmental standards and river pollution make rafting problematic. We have lost the technology that gave us eternal material. The forgotten technology of rafting is another example of how we have simplified production at the expense of quality. We have learned to dry wood in chambers in a couple of days, but we have not learned to make it as durable. But water was not the only element that ancient builders tamed. In the next chapter, you will learn how they used the most destructive force of nature, fire, to give wood immortality. Want to know a secret that will change your idea of home protection? We usually associate fire with the destruction of wooden buildings, with fires and ashes. However, paradoxically, it was fire that became one of the most reliable defenders of medieval architecture. The technology of burning wood was known to many peoples, from the Vikings to the Japanese. It allowed them to turn a vulnerable surface into an impenetrable shield. The process looked frightening. A finished board or log was placed directly into the flames. The craftsmen carefully ensured that the wood did not burn to ashes, but only charred on the outside. The top layer of cellulose burned, turning into pure carbon. The pores of the wood closed, sealing the internal structure. The result was a black, textured surface resembling dragon skin. Charcoal is a material that is of absolutely no interest to fungi, insects, or bacteria. It contains no nutrients, is chemically inert, and stable. Wood-boring beetles cannot gnaw through the charcoal layer, and mold cannot grow on it. Burnt wood became practically eternal. It was not affected by moisture or contact with the ground. In Japan, this technique was perfected and given the name yakisugi. The Japanese burned cedar boards, tying them into triangular tubes and setting them on fire from the inside. The draft created a powerful column of fire that evenly burned the surface. After that, the boards were washed with water and rubbed with oil. Such facades stand for centuries without any repairs. In Europe, the technology was cruder but no less effective. Support posts that had to be dug into the ground were always burned on a bonfire. This was a tar shirt that protected the most vulnerable part of the structure. If you dig up the foundation of an ancient palisade, you will see that the charred ends have been perfectly preserved. Rot ate away at everything around it, but receded in the face of charcoal. In addition to biological protection, burning also changed the physical properties of the surface. The carbon layer became hydrophobic, meaning it repelled water. Raindrops rolled off the black wall like balls of mercury without being absorbed. The wood remained dry even after heavy rain. This was critical for the preservation of the walls. Fire also made the wood more resistant to fire itself. Strange as it may sound, the charred layer acts as a heat insulator. To set such a board on fire again, a much higher temperature and prolonged exposure are required. A house clad with charred wood was safer than a conventional log house. It was passive fire protection. Today, this technology is coming back into fashion as an elite design solution. Architects admire the texture and color of charred wood, but for a medieval peasant, it was not a matter of aesthetics, but a matter of survival. He could not afford to replace rotten crowns every 10 years. Fire gave him confidence in tomorrow. We are used to buying cans of chemical antiseptics with skulls and crosses on them. We saturate our homes with poisons, breathe them in, and hope for protection. Our ancestors used a pure element, leaving no harmful waste behind. It was an environmentally friendly and incredibly effective method. The use of fire was only one stage of protection. Equally important was how the house was built on the ground. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos about survival in the Middle Ages. Guess what happened next when builders tried to put a house directly on the ground? That's right, it started to rot almost instantly, absorbing moisture like a sponge. Medieval craftsmen quickly learned their lesson. Wood should never touch damp soil. The ground is a source of endless moisture and hordes of microorganisms. Therefore, the main task was to raise the structure, to break this destructive contact. The oldest and most reliable method was to use stone boulders. Huge stones were placed under each corner of the log house and at the intersections of the walls. They served as a natural barrier through which water could not rise to the wood. Stone does not conduct moisture in the same way as porous soil. These were stone shoes that kept the house dry. A layer of birch bark was often laid between the stone and the first crown of the log house. Birch bark is a unique natural waterproofing material containing tar. It does not rot for decades and does not allow water to pass through. Special attention was paid to the ventilation of the underfloor space. A house built on stones floated above the ground. The wind blew freely under the floor, drying any drops of moisture and preventing dampness from accumulating. There were no solid concrete strips turning the basement into a damp crypt. Dryness was the key to the health of the entire structure. In later times, brick plinths began to be built, but the principle remained the same. The wood started high, often at chest level. The lower floors were used for household needs, storage, or workshops. Modern mistakes are often associated with a violation of this simple rule. We pour a concrete slab, lay waterproofing on it, and put up wooden walls almost flush with the ground. In winter, snowdrifts lie directly on the wood, and in spring, meltwater stands against the walls. Concrete draws moisture from the soil, and the slightest crack in the insulation becomes fatal. Capillary suction is a physical phenomenon that kills modern houses. Moisture rises through microscopic pores, overcoming gravity. If there is no reliable break, the wood can get wet up to a height of 2 meters. Ancient craftsmen did not know the term capillary effect, but they clearly saw its consequences, and they knew how to deal with it. Interestingly, old houses often did not have rigid fastenings to the foundation. They were held in place by their own enormous weight. This allowed the building to breathe and move with the ground without collapsing. Modern rigid fastenings often tear the wood during seasonal soil movements. Flexibility was a strength, not a weakness. The foundation was the basis, but how the house breathed was no less important. How did they cope with dampness inside without modern air conditioners and exhaust fans? The modern house is an airtight thermos. We seal it with plastic windows, wrap it in vapor barrier film, and fill all the cracks with foam. We fight for every joule of heat, trying to keep it inside at all costs. However, in this struggle, we often lose the war against mold and excessive humidity. In the Middle Ages, the approach to ventilation and microclimate was diametrically opposite. The house was not a capsule, it was a living membrane, permeable to air. People back then did not even think about making their homes completely airtight. They trusted the natural properties of materials and understood that air must circulate freely. In their view, a house was like a living organism that breathes and reacts to the weather. If the walls needed to dry, they dried. If the air needed to escape, it escaped. This simplicity was born of the experience of many generations, and it was precisely this that made such houses surprisingly healthy to live in. The walls of a wooden house built on moss or straw had natural breathability. Air slowly but constantly seeped through the micropores of the wood and the joints between the logs. This ensured a constant supply of fresh oxygen without noticeable drafts. In such a house, there was never stale air or high humidity because excess moisture easily escaped to the outside. The walls functioned as a huge heat exchanger, giving away the excess, but retaining what was important. The house was its own climate control system. This permeability was a consequence of the construction technology itself. The logs were rarely fitted perfectly, and tiny channels remained between them through which air could penetrate inside. Moss and tow covered large gaps, but did not provide complete insulation. As a result, the house remained dry even during the rainy season. Moisture did not linger and did not soak into the walls. This saved the building from rot, which so often destroys modern houses. The main ventilation device was the stove. The huge mass of brick or stone required a large amount of air for combustion. The stove sucked the moist, stale air out of the room and expelled it into the chimney. It was replaced by dry outside air passing through the walls. It was a powerful exhaust system that worked without electricity or complex devices. The house adapted to the rhythm of the furnace. The stronger the stove burned, the more efficiently the ventilation worked. The flames literally pulled air from all the cracks, creating a gentle movement in the room. That is why old houses were not stuffy even in winter, when doors were rarely open. The air was constantly refreshed, and the humidity remained within natural limits. People felt fresh even if they spent the whole day at home. It was an amazingly well-thought-out mechanism, born not from calculations but from practice. A special type of dwelling was the smoky hut, or a house heated with a black stove. Such houses did not have a chimney. The smoke went straight into the room, rose to the ceiling, and escaped through a special window or through the roof. This sounds terrible to a modern person, but for wood it was a salvation. Smoke is a powerful preservative that protects wood from decay. Smoky houses were much more resistant to time than it seems at first glance. Yes, it was dark and smoky inside, but the wood was impregnated with a protective layer. The smoke destroyed bacteria, repelled insects, and dried out damp areas of the structure. Thanks to this, such houses lasted into old age. In many places, they stood longer than later houses with chimneys. Smoke was their main bodyguard. The soot and tar contained in the smoke settled on the walls and rafters. They covered the wood with a protective film that killed any insects and fungi. The wood in smoky houses acquired a beautiful dark shade and became as hard as iron. Such houses stood for centuries without rotting. Beetles simply could not survive in this smoky environment. The house became as if hardened by fire. This soot acted as a natural antiseptic. It penetrated deep into the pores of the wood, sealing them and making them less accessible to moisture. A thin layer of tar acted as a hydrophobic coating, repelling water. Even the logs in the lower crowns lasted much longer than in modern houses. The walls were so durable that they were often reused in the construction of new houses. This proved how effectively smoke protected the wood. The absence of airtight films allowed moisture to escape from the insulation unhindered. If the roof leaked, the attic quickly dried out thanks to drafts. Modern insulation materials, trapped between layers of plastic, turn into a wet sponge when wet. They do not dry out for years, rotting the rafters in a couple of seasons. We have created ideal greenhouses for mold. In the past, such problems hardly ever arose because the structures were open. Wood freely releases moisture if it is not sealed under plastic sheeting. Attics were always well ventilated, and even heavy rain did not cause long-term problems. Rafters dried by the wind rarely rotted. Mold simply did not have time to develop. Natural ventilation did its job. The interior finish was also natural. Clay plaster, whitewash, or simply clean wood. These materials are capable of regulating humidity, absorbing excess moisture when it is damp and releasing it when it is dry. Plastic wallpaper and stretched ceilings deprive the house of this buffering ability. Moisture settles as condensation on windows and in corners. The microclimate becomes unstable and unhealthy. Natural materials created a soft and even atmosphere in the house. Lime had bactericidal properties and purified the air. Clay trapped dust particles and made the room more comfortable to breathe in. Clean wood smelled of resin, creating an effect of freshness. All this made the house a pleasant and peaceful place. Its atmosphere was natural and long-lasting. Are you ready for the shocking truth about what kills trees the fastest? We are used to thinking of nails as a carpenter's best friend, but any restorer of ancient buildings will tell you that metal in wood is a time bomb. Where iron and wood come into contact, a chemical reaction occurs that destroys both. Medieval craftsmen knew this and tried to avoid using nails in basic structures. Iron has a tendency to rust. When oxidized, the volume of the metal increases several times. Rust begins to press on the wood fibers from the inside, tearing them apart. A black spot of rot forms around the nail. This is a chemical burn of the wood by iron oxides. Over time, the nail simply falls out of the rotten hole and the joint falls apart. In addition, metal is a bridge for cold. In winter, the nail freezes through and condensation forms on its warm part inside the wall. A drop of water born from the air begins its destructive work deep inside the log. The nail, in essence, sweats inside the wall, constantly moistening the wood around it. Instead of iron nails, wooden dowels or pins were used. These were round or square sticks made of hardwood, usually oak or birch. They were used to fasten the crowns of the log house together. A wooden nail in a wooden wall felt right at home. The genius of this solution lay in the identical physics of the materials. When the wall got wet, the dowel also swelled. When the wall dried, the dowel dried with it. The connection always remained tight and monolithic. Wood worked in unison with wood, without conflicting or destroying each other. Complex lock joints made it possible to do without fasteners altogether. Dovetail, bowl, claw. These ingenious cuts held the structure firmly in place. The weight of the logs wedged the locks, and the stronger the pressure from above, the stronger the bottom became. It was architecture that only grew stronger over time. Of course, forged nails were used, but mainly for fastening shingles on the roof or door hinges. They had a square cross-section, which damaged the wood less than modern round nails. In addition, old iron was cleaner and rusted more slowly, creating a protective patina on the surface. Modern metal brackets and self-tapping screws are the scourge of wooden house construction. The rigid fixation of metal does not allow the wood to move naturally during shrinkage. The logs hang on the fasteners, forming gaps through which the wind blows. We try to subjugate living material to the rigid geometry of metal, and we lose. Wooden architecture without nails is not a myth or an exaggeration. Kiji and Norwegian stave churches have stood for centuries precisely because there are no foreign bodies in their load-bearing walls. They are solid, organic structures. Metal is an implant that will sooner or later be rejected. But even perfect walls won't save you if the roof leaks, and their roofs were special, unlike ours. In the next chapter, you'll learn how they coped with this terrible weather. The roof was the main cap of the house, taking the brunt of the elements. Unlike the walls, it had to withstand direct streams of rain and tons of snow. Medieval roofing materials such as shingles, shakes, or thatch seem unreliable to us. But when laid correctly, they lasted for decades, and thatched roofs even longer. The secret lay in the angle of the slope and the way the material was treated. If you look at old engravings, you will see that roofs were always very steep. The angle of inclination often exceeded 45-50 degrees. This was not a design choice. Water did not linger on such a steep roof for a second. It rushed down in a rapid stream. Snow also did not accumulate in dangerous drifts, but slid off under its own weight. The main material for roofing was wooden shingles or plowshares, like scales on domes. And here the rule chop, don't saw came into effect. Roofing boards were never sawn with a saw. They were split with an axe or a special knife along the grain. This is a fundamentally important point. When splitting, the cleaving follows the natural boundaries of the fibers without damaging their structure. The surface is smooth and the capillary channels remain closed. Water rolls off such a board without being absorbed. If the board is sawn, the saw tears the fibers, opening the pores. Such a board absorbs water like a sponge and rots quickly. The shingles were laid in several layers, sometimes 3 or 4. The result was a dense wooden carpet. When it rained, the top layer got wet and swelled, closing tightly at the edges. The roof became airtight. As soon as the sun came out, the wood dried out, the gaps opened slightly, and the space under the roof was ventilated. The roof breathed. Thatched roofs were the pinnacle of peasant engineering. A properly laid sheaf of reeds or rye straw did not let water through. The stalks were laid so that water ran down them without penetrating the thickness. A thick layer of straw served as an ideal insulator. In winter, it was warm under such a roof, and in summer, it was cool. Modern metal roofing is like a drum during rain and a hot frying pan in summer. It collects condensation on the inside, requiring complex membranes and films to protect the insulation. Wooden or straw roofing solved all these problems at once, without unnecessary layers. Gutters and downspouts were often made from solid, hollowed-out logs or birch bark. They were placed far beyond the walls so that water would not wash away the foundation. The architecture of the roof with its huge overhangs worked like an umbrella, sheltering the walls from slanting rain. The walls remained dry even in bad weather. Repairing such a roof was simple. It was possible to replace a few rotten boards or bundles of straw without dismantling the entire structure. It was a modular system designed to be maintained by an ordinary person, not a team of specialists. The roof was not just protection, it was part of the ecosystem of the house. But wood required additional protection, especially where water was a constant visitor. In the next chapter, we will talk about chemistry that did not kill. Today we go to the store and buy a can labeled 10-year protection, whose composition is incomprehensible and frightening to us. In the Middle Ages, chemistry was simple, natural, and time-tested. Craftsmen used substances provided by nature itself to enhance the natural protective properties of wood. The main components of this alchemy were resin, oil, and wax. Tree resin, or sap, is the blood of the tree, which it uses to heal its wounds. People learned to extract it and process it into tar and pitch. Pine tar was a universal remedy for protecting boats, roofs, and the lower crowns of log houses. It penetrated deep into the structure of the wood, polymerized, and created a waterproof barrier. The smell of tar repelled insects for miles. In Scandinavia, churches were coated with a mixture of tar and charcoal. This gave them their characteristic black color and velvety texture. Under the influence of the sun, the tar melted slightly, filling in small cracks that could appear over time. It was a self-repairing coating. Linseed oil was another favorite. The linseed oil molecule is very small and can penetrate the narrowest pores of wood. Over time, the oil oxidizes in the air and turns into a solid polymer called linseed oil. Wood impregnated with oil became hard and water-repellent, but continued to breathe. Unlike modern varnishes, the oil did not create a film that peels off over time. Beeswax was used for special occasions. A mixture of oil and wax, applied hot, created a noble matte finish. The wax closed the pores to moisture but was permeable to air. Such a coating was pleasant to the touch and completely safe for health. More exotic compositions were also used. For example, bull's blood or cottage cheese, casein, was added to the whitewash solution. This made the lime coating incredibly durable and water-resistant. Casein glue made from milk was as strong as modern synthetic glues. Linseed oil, real linseed oil boiled from flax or hemp oil, was worth its weight in gold. It was used to coat icons and expensive furniture. It preserved colors and protected against the effects of time. What is sold today as linseed oil is often a synthetic substitute made from petroleum products, which has nothing to do with the original. The main principle of all these products was that they worked with the wood, not instead of it. They did not seal it in a plastic bag, but strengthened its structure. The aging of such a coating looked noble. It did not crack into shreds, but simply thinned, requiring only a slight renewal with a new layer of oil. Today, we are returning to natural oils and waxes, realizing that synthetics have lost this battle. Old recipes are back in vogue because they work. Environmental friendliness and durability are not empty words, but the result of the right choice of materials. But no oil will help if the wood itself is chosen incorrectly. There is a part of the trunk that is more valuable than gold, and a part that is better off being thrown away. More on this in the next chapter. If you look at a cross-section of an old log, you will see that it consists of two different areas, light at the edges and dark in the center. The light part is the sapwood, young living wood through which sap flows. The dark part is the heartwood or core. This is the skeleton of the tree, dead tissue saturated with resins and tannins. It is the heartwood that is the eternal material. Medieval carpenters ruthlessly cut away the sapwood, leaving only the heartwood. Sapwood is loose, moist, and sweet to beetles. The heartwood, on the other hand, is dense, dry, and bitter. A house built from heartwood could stand for centuries without any paint. This was especially true for pine and larch. Modern timber and rounded logs are, in essence, just sapwood. The machine cuts off the most valuable protective part of the trunk to obtain a perfect cylinder. We build houses from the flesh and throw away the bones. Such wood is soft, easily absorbs water, and rots quickly without chemical support. The density of the annual rings was also important. Trees that grow in the harsh northern climate grow slowly. Their rings are so dense that they are difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. Such wood is called fine-grained. It has phenomenal strength and hardness. Today's forests are often grown on plantations like corn. They are stimulated with fertilizers to make them grow faster. Such wood has wide annual rings, a loose structure, and low density. It is foam rather than a structural material. It is suitable for paper, but not for a house that will last for centuries. The craftsmen sought out red pine trees, trees growing on high ground, on dry sandy soils. The wood of these pine trees was red, thoroughly impregnated with resin. Swamp pine, on the other hand, was loose and watery. Choosing the right tree in the forest was an art that took years to learn. Understanding the anatomy of a tree allowed us to create structures that worked to the limits of the material's capabilities. But all this was brought together into a single system thanks to the right geometry. Architecture was the last but most important line of defense. The shape of a medieval house was dictated not by style or fashion, but by the harsh necessity of protection from water. People lived in a climate where it could rain for weeks, and snow would fall in thick layers and remain until spring. Any mistake in construction threatened dampness, mold, and the destruction of the house. Therefore, every architectural decision was born not from fantasy, but from the experience of survival. If you look at chalets in the Alps or log houses in the Russian north, you will see one common feature: huge roof overhangs. They were as much a part of the house as the walls or foundation. These large projections were not decorative, but a vital element. The roof extended beyond the walls by a meter or even two, creating a protective canopy around the entire house. Thanks to this, the facades hardly got wet, even when the wind drove the rain at an angle. People watched the water run off the roof and knew that the further it fell from the walls, the longer the house would last. This is how the architectural umbrella was born. A simple but ingenious idea, it served as a year-round barrier against the elements. Such overhangs reliably protected the walls from slanting rain and snow. Even if the storm was strong, water rarely got on the logs, and a dry wall is a warm and eternal wall that is not afraid of frost or temperature changes. In addition, wide overhangs protected the wood from the scorching summer sun, preventing cracking and drying out. The house seemed to live under a huge protective roof that took the brunt of the elements. This ensured the durability of the structure for decades. In areas with heavy snowfall, the overhangs had not only a protective, but also a practical function. Snow falling from the roof was thrown away from the walls and did not accumulate close to the house. This reduced the risk of meltwater penetrating the foundation in the spring. In summer, the same design protected against overheating by creating shade around the house. Inside, this solution provided a more stable microclimate. All this made wide eaves a universal and essential element. Particular attention was paid to areas that were most often exposed to precipitation. Door frames were made thicker and deeper so that water would run off the edge and not seep inside. The porch was built raised so that meltwater streams would bypass it. The canopy over the entrance was made long and sturdy, as the safety of the house in bad weather depended on it. Even small details such as the ledge above the threshold played a role. Everything was designed to ensure that water did not linger near the house for a second. The craftsmen used the principle of structural protection. They designed the joints so that water could not accumulate anywhere, neither in crevices nor on horizontal surfaces. All surfaces where moisture could accumulate were made with a slope so that drops would immediately run off. The orientation of the house relative to the cardinal points was also important. A blank wall was placed against the prevailing winds so that it would receive less precipitation. Windows were placed on the sunny side to warm the house in winter and improve lighting. The layout of the site took into account the relief so that meltwater would flow away from the house, not under it. Even a slight slope of the ground could solve the problem of dampness. Thus, the site became part of the architecture. Modern architecture often ignores these rules for the sake of a beautiful picture. Flat roofs, no overhangs, open terraces. All of this looks great in renderings and photographs. But in real climates, such solutions lead to problems after just a couple of seasons. We combat the consequences of poor design with sealants, membranes, and complex drainage systems. But water always finds a way in. It acts patiently but relentlessly. Beauty without functionality quickly turns into a costly mistake. We build box-like houses that are defenseless against the elements. An old house was like a mushroom, with a large cap and a strong stem. This form was honed over thousands of years of housing evolution, surviving climatic cycles and adapting. By abandoning it, we condemn our homes to a quick death. The elements do not spare incorrect geometry. A house must not only stand, but also interact correctly with nature. For our ancestors, a house was a living being that needed to be sheltered and cared for. They knew that nature was stronger than man, and therefore built in harmony with it. Their dwellings may have been simple, but there was nothing random about them. Every corner, every protrusion had its own purpose. That is why such houses served for decades without major repairs. They belonged to their climate. We have come a long way from the winter forest to the finished house, piecing together the forgotten technologies of the past brick by brick. The secret of medieval wood was not magic, but a set of simple yet strict rules. The right time to cut, water hardening, fire protection, stone foundations, and wise geometry are the links in a chain. Remove one link and the chain will break. The modern world offers us quick solutions, but we pay for speed with durability. We have replaced quality with quantity and craftsmanship with technology. But nature has not changed. The laws of physics and biology remain the same. Fungus still loves sugar and moisture, and iron still rusts. Maybe we should stop reinventing the wheel and take a closer look at the experience of those who built for the ages. After all, their creations still stand today, like silent reproaches to our consumer society. What topics would you like to see in the next videos? Maybe we should explore the secrets of castle construction or the mysteries of ancient metallurgy. Write your suggestions in the comments and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new historical investigations.